yes, the platform is ultimately a product of the interaction, like people are the platform in a sense, right? And it's an interaction between people and systems and machines, etc., and infrastructure. I think what's interesting among many of the groups that we work with at Point of View is they are not English speaking. English is not their first language, so it's often an Indian language. And when we think about the aesthetics of platforms, often they are designed for a particular user. And that user is not necessarily rural or tribal or non-native English speaking, right? And I think what we see quite often is that women or girls or queer persons from low-income communities who are very much part of these platforms, right? Particularly when we think, say, WhatsApp, which is the most widely used platform in India. Because of the aesthetics and because of a certain sort of hierarchy, there's a sense of not belonging to the platform. There's a sense of almost being an interloper and a sense somehow that this platform was not designed for me. And that comes through also in terms of, again, if everything is not localized, right? If it's only partially localized, the instructions, etc., etc. So one of the things we find is that given the kind of diversity of users in the Indian context, a platform that is mainly designed for what I would call text-first communities with high literacy, etc., really doesn't work because most of them use voice. When we work with, say, domestic workers on WhatsApp, they're leaving voice messages, right? So they're kind of working around sort of the dominant part of the platform and finding a workaround and making it their own. So I think the biggest thing that strikes me is how do we design platforms if we really think of them as, microcosms of our worlds or of new worlds in the making digitally, not for one set of people, but really in some sort of hybrid way, which allows people to enter and occupy these spaces as like digital citizens almost, right? Instead of feeling like, oh my God, I don't know, this, that, etc., and feeling their way nervously and in an intimidated and alienated way around them. I can share the example actually that a lot of women, girls, certainly queer persons, etc., use digital platforms to explore gender and sexuality, right? So even the simple act of taking a certain photograph of yourself, wearing something that you may not be allowed to wear in your physical community, but putting up that image, right? That gives you space. There's an interesting example in one of our workshops. A woman came from rural Madhya Pradesh in central India. She had just bought a new smartphone and she took a selfie of herself with it, with her sari, but she had taken the sari pallu off her head. And when she went back home and showed her husband the photograph, he was enraged with the selfie and he took her phone and she had just bought it and flung it across the room and smashed it. To me, that tells me the story of what you're not allowed to do in physical spaces. Even that simple pleasure of just like showing, exploring, maybe meeting romantic possibilities, hooking up, right? Being able to assert yourself in all these ways. Being able to maybe even like go to certain sites for entertainment, which you can't necessarily do in all physical spaces if you're a girl or a woman, etc., right? Yeah, just these kinds of small things, just making it your personal space to do exactly what you want. I think that's the real gift of platforms in a sense.